We are going to talk about a topic we're all really passionate about, which is advisor communications. We're going to start out. So, start out with a little bit of context about advisor communications. I'm going to tell you really briefly about a study YCharts has run over the last 3 years, asking people who are advised to talk about how they feel about their advisor's communications. I'm going to zip through 4 quick slides. I will show a QR code. Please download it. It's free. And there's a whole lot more to it. But let me tell you about the study. 775 people were surveyed. Great cross-section of male versus female, age, AUM, geography. And here's what they told us. First of all, 64% said, only 64% said their advisors' information they were sharing resonated with them, and that was down from 70% the year before. So somewhere between 30 and 40% of your communication is not effective. Number 2, 62% of clients that were advised by an advisor are not very comfortable with their financial plan. Discomfort with the financial plan is very concerning. So 38% said I'm very comfortable, 62% said I am not very comfortable. Most concerning thing we found out is 75% of advised clients in 2023 changed or contemplated changing their advisor. That was up from 50% the year before. So no, the churn rate is not 75%, but that's a lot of people saying, I'm thinking about changing my advisor. So just to sum it all up in the final slide, what we found, and again, I'll show you a QR code, less of your conversation is resonating with your clients. Some simple math here. When you add that together with less communication leads to lower confidence and understanding, that has a couple byproducts that are very concerning. Number 1 is that client is unwilling to refer you to their friends and family. And number 2 is they're at greater risk of churn. So if you want to learn any more, a whole lot more detail, but I don't want to take up any more time on that. I'd like to take up time on a discussion here. So, Sam and Adam, before we move on to how do you become an effective communicator, any reaction to what YCharts found out? Agree, disagree, other?
I mean, I think the biggest kind of aha is that 75% of people even just thinking about changing. And, you know, when we look at what's a number 1 reason why somebody considers changing, it's communication. So I'm glad we're here to talk about it today because I think there's a lot of people in the room that if you ask them, hey, what is your plan? What are you going to send out to clients or prospects this week, this month? A lot of people have no idea what they're saying or when. So they need a better plan and strategy.
Yeah, I just think it's a little startling, to be honest with you. I mean, you think the hard work is getting clients, and then you can kind of take it easy a little bit. I think a lot of us feel that way, that the work comes on the front end. So you don't really think about, no, the work continues all the time. And so from a communication standpoint, that really reframes the way we need to approach our clients, because a lot of our firms are built on client referrals and client additions. And if what we're saying is not resonating with them, then we need a new strategy.
Okay. So let's just agree, and you're welcome to disagree, but let's agree on stage that there's a lot of areas of opportunity to become better communicators. Let's start getting tactical, though, about how do we do that. So, Adam, first question for you is, you kind of need a plan in life and in communication to succeed in communicating better. First question, assuming you have some things you want to communicate, where should you start? Should you start with your current customers or should you start with your prospects? Who's most important for you to start communicating better with?
Yes. No. I think, so if 75%, even if that number isn't exactly correct, it's directionally correct, if that many people are not resonating with what you're saying, then I think you need to have really a two-part plan. So the first part is something I think as advisors we're all really, really good at. That's building relationships. So that's your regular communication cadence. So if it's quarterly, semi-annually, monthly, whatever that cadence is, it's your regular communications, your texts, your emails, your phone calls, your meetings, those sorts of things. I think by and large people in this industry do that really, really well. The part I think that we need to work on is something that you two know a lot about, is how do we bring along content alongside of the regular relationship building skills that we have to fill in the gaps between the time when we're not communicating. Because direct communication, I think, is best, that one-to-one communication, but it's just not scalable. Even if you do have the time to call your clients every week, at some point they'd be like, why are you calling me? Like, they're gonna get annoyed. So you have to have that content to come alongside where you can put it in a format, in multiple formats actually, where they can engage with you on their time and on their schedule in a way that's not so offensive.
And one of the things I'd add is I'd start with communicating with your current customers. They have held away assets. They may or may not have shared that with you yet. They have a lot of assets that are not under management with you. Start with them. Improve your communication with them. But Sam, so you start communicating. What should you be communicating about?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think the number one thing is to think, what is a pain point that people have? So many people want to create content around retirement because they think, okay, that's what I'm really helping people to do, to invest for the long haul and create a retirement planning strategy. But what is the pain point someone has right now? Retirement's a way off in the future thing, but something like taxes, that comes up year after year. We have to deal with them. So, content around the problems people have. There was a great piece of content I saw an advisor put out where when the weather changed in Chicago, he said, the temperature's up in the 60s this week in the Chicagoland area, and so I'm hitting the golf course for the first time this season, and some of you might be doing the same, and you might be wondering, can I deduct that golf game? is that something I can do? And here's what you need to know. So it's not just about the pain point, but it's also how do you make it relatable to people so that it's not boring, right? And so another thing you can think about is, I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of the Flesch Kincaid score, but it's actually a thing you can go into Word, and under tools you can look at what is the reading level of your content. And we tend in this industry to make it way too high. You really want to be more like newspapers and magazines, which is about a 7th grade reading level. So if you take something you're writing and you put it into a Word doc, you can go to tools and look at your Flesch Kincaid score, and you really want it to be between like a 7th and a 9th grade reading level. It's gonna be so much more relatable to people and interesting because you're keeping it easy to scan, easy to absorb.
That's easier for some of us than others, I would say. I like what you're saying there because I think it should be a blend of the technical and the personal side of things. And I think the people that do it really, really well are blending those two together. Your clients absolutely want you to know, they want to know that you know how to do the technical part of the job. But that's table stakes. That's why they hire you. They assume that. But they also want to see you out there displaying that. But they also want to know about you as people. Now, you don't have to read them your grocery list every week, but it's like, how do you let them in a little bit to talk about your family, to talk about your values, your goals, to give them that insight of what it might be like to work with you before they ever meet you?
See, and you say they don't want to read your grocery list every week, but if you're targeting really young families, maybe you say, here's a Trader Joe's haul on a budget of like cool things you could make this week, right? You can get really fun with it.
And I think there's a lot of pressure advisors feel to become macroeconomists and have a perspective on the 10-2 yield curve inversion and interest rates and et cetera. I find, when I get a note from my advisor, sometimes they've just cultivated interesting things that other people wrote. They took 20 minutes, had read them themselves, sent some links through. Sometimes they don't even read that email.
Right.
But I know it's there. And I know that said that my advisor was thinking about me, which means a ton.
Yeah, it could be something as simple as here's some headlines you might have read this week,
Yep.
Pick 3 articles, and here's what I think you should know about them.
Yep.
Summarize your thoughts.
Any other tricks about creating content without feeling overwhelmed to sit down with a glass of bourbon and figure out the economy yourself?
For me, so I'll give you a personal example. When I started my podcast 5 years ago, my initial topic list was all technical. And it was the exact reason why I didn't record an episode for a year. Because I didn't want to do it. I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't think about this stuff. I still don't think about that stuff. That's not something I obsess about. And so for me, it's like I had to find something that I was passionate about and a way to communicate that I was passionate about, because I feel like that stuff comes through. So that's one thing that I try to do, is I try not to be something I'm not. So I'm not the guy who's going to go figure out the macroeconomic trends and talk about what the Fed is doing. That's not me. That's other people, and God bless you if you're in that lane and you can really, really do well there. But it wouldn't work for me.
I think one other tip is, if you're struggling with coming up with something that's relatable, tell a story. If you start with a story, you'll be so much more likely to hook people than if you try to start with, stats or facts, or you overwhelm yourself. Start with a story of a way that you've helped somebody or someone who's been in a similar situation.
Yep. So if you have something that you want to share with your clients, there's all kinds of channels you can use to communicate with them. You got email, you have text, you have social media, you have podcasts, you have webinars, you have all kinds of things. First question, should every advisor aspire to be able to do all of those things well? Or are there a couple channels which you said, these are the table stakes ones, and then experiment in other channels?
Yeah, I personally think you need to pick the channels that are going to be most effective for your business. Where are your clients spending their time? You mentioned, texting as one. I think what's really interesting is, if you look at, if people ask you, all of you here today, we've all been getting the text from Paula, right, from Future Proof. Did you sign up for your breakthrough meetings? And for a lot of us, maybe we got emails from her, but we didn't respond to them. But then you get a text saying, did you do your breakthrough meeting? And the text is so personal that you go and you take action on it. We found at FMG, through an acquisition we did with YChat, that when an advisor would text somebody saying, hey, I sent you those docs, can you please do the DocuSign? They were getting the DocuSigns back within 5 minutes when it was via text. So, you need to know what channels are going to work best for what situations. And so there's one-to-one that's going to work really good in situations like that. And then for top of the funnel, brand awareness, you need a one-to-manys. And you need to pick a social channel that's going to work well. But do you need to be on every social channel? No.
One of the nice things I've found about long-form content is you can, for instance, do a podcast, and that's a big piece of content. But you can also chop it up. So you can take out little slivers of it, and you can put that on social. You can put that on email. You can even create a blog out of it. You can do so many things if you start with one bigger thing, so you don't feel like you've got to do all the things, but you can repurpose your content to really leverage your time. Because it's tough. I get it. As an advisor, as a firm leader, whatever it is, like, we only have so much time to be able to do these things, so you can't be everywhere all the time. And you have to really pick the thing that feels good for you, that you can leverage, and that also you can be consistent over time. Because I think the worst thing you can do is start something, and then 2-3 months later, you die off, and then your clients or your prospects are like, where did that thing go? It's like, I didn't have time for it,
Yeah. I think, too, the promotion part, how many times have people, many of you can relate to this, you spend so much time to create a great podcast episode, or you write an article or a blog post, and then so maybe you spend 5 hours on it, an hour even, whatever it is, but then when it comes time to email it, you spend a minute with the subject line. Well, the subject line is going to be the thing that determines whether people open it to read it or not. So, spending more time thinking about the promotion of the things that you've spent all this time to create is a big problem I see a lot of firms have.
Yeah, and I see that with you all the time, Samantha, with create content once and then multi-purpose it, long form, short form, social media, email, and you're getting through to people, but the creative process was one time, right?
Yeah, I had a video I just reposted, and a bunch of people came up to me at this event saying, that was a great video. I recorded it 4 years ago, but I just took a clip of it and reposted it because it's still relevant.
Wow. So with clients, how often, since email will continue to be a dominant but very congested channel, how often should you be emailing your clients?
I think we have a kind of an informal goal to be in front of our clients in one way, shape, or form about once a week. And so if you break that down, so for instance, we're in front of somebody quarterly, in person or via check-in and traditional means. But between that time, we're doing content, so we'll do the podcast, we'll do the little slivers of the show, someone else will write a blog, we'll do a quarterly investment newsletter, we do all these sorts of things, a webinar, a new piece of content that we blast out in email. So it's not just checking in every week, those sorts of things like, hey, how are you? You still good? Next week, you still good? You need anything? It's really a nice way to stay top of mind with people without inundating them.
And I think a big thing is this is why it's so important to segment your contacts. I mean, so many people I work with still do not just have a basic client list and a prospect list. And then within that, you know, if you even have a prospect list and let's just say you take all the people who are business owners and put them in one group, think about how much more impactful that is. You're not going to be worried you're, over communicating or sending too much. If something happens that's, specific to people who own a small business with legislation and you want to email that group, it's so much easier. There's a woman I just met with, an advisor, and she had just like that, a group of prospects that were small business owners, and she was emailing this one business owner, was on the list for 5 years. And then one day messaged her and said, pretty much every month I hear from you about different tips for business owners, and I'm selling my business and I don't have an advisor and I want to work with you, right? So I think segmenting at even just a really basic level is huge for, so many businesses, and people don't do it.
Any other tips on prospecting? Not your current client, but your prospects. You've said, segment, who the doctors are, who the, athletes are, lawyers are, whatever. Any other good tips on having your content really stand out when you prospect?
So I kind of like to attack it in two different ways. The first is the personal connection side of things. So when you meet somebody, it's creating a relationship where you're almost building a friendship. You're not putting them in a funnel. So, sometimes when you meet with somebody and immediately you're in a funnel, you're like, I don't want to be in a funnel, but you're in a funnel. And so what we try to do is really try to build that personal relationship first, and then in an easy manner, get them plugged into our content. So again, they can engage with it on their own terms and their own time, and it doesn't feel like a sales pitch. It doesn't feel like anything aggressive. It's just like, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're about. Feel free to engage with us if you want to. And then you've got their contact information, and you can send them the targeted things too. If you know that little bit about them and you are visiting with them once in a while, you can send them more targeted things, but they're also seeing all the general things.
A few things that come to mind for me is one, something we've seen be really successful just the last 6 months is an email that went out about a summer family meeting. So rather than kind of reinventing the wheel, looking at clients you're already working with that are thinking about generational wealth, and the email basically said, summer's a great time, maybe the kids are home from college, people are getting together for family reunions. We wanted to offer, if there's, multiple generations that you'd like to work or, talk with our team and get everybody on the same page about what your plan is and, estate planning and legacy planning and where everything is. That worked really well, so kind of tapping into the other family members. Another thing we've seen work really well is, workshops or webinars where the advisor emails the clients and says, I'm going to host this educational thing so you can come learn about X, Y, or Z, something really relevant. Maybe it's a tax strategy. And then they say, a couple days later, they email back the client list and they say, hey, we've had such a great response to this event. We can only have so many people, but we're going to allow every client to invite 2 or 3 other friends or family members to come to this event so you can forward it to 2 or 3 people. So it creates that air of exclusivity, but that's a lot better of a way to get a referral than just saying, hey, do you know anybody that, would want to come and meet with us that we could help? You're giving something away of value.
And I think the give to get thing is super important. I can't tell you how many times I receive a LinkedIn connection, which I'm thrilled to make a new connection
Always want more friends.
in our space. It's always nice to have more people that in the space. But when that's too closely paired with, can I talk to you about your wealth? Total turnoff. Like, you haven't given me anything. So get people on a drip campaign of interesting content so that you earn your way into a discussion about future life goals and plans, and are you advised, or just pace yourself a little bit
Well,
on that.
and think about if you meet with somebody, if you've done a good job with content, with blogs, with articles, and you have a meeting with a prospective client. When the meeting's over, you can say, that was great to meet with you. We'd love to work with you. We think, we'd be a great fit. And by the way, here's some articles I've written that talk about some of the key points we had in our meeting. And you send them a link to 4 or 5 articles that, are an overview. Whether they choose to work with you or not, now you've given them value. And that's where content marketing, I think, can really help your firm shine, because you're just giving away something and showing you want to be a helper.
Yeah. Adam, how long do you wait before there's an ask?
I'm still waiting. No, I'm not the world's most aggressive. Obviously, we've had a lot of tremendous growth, but it's not because I know an elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Like that's not me. So I really try to pick a strategy that's going to work for a really, really long time, but I tweak along the way. So whether it's start with a podcast, then you're adding video, then you're adding blog. I just feel like a lot of times it's a really, really long game. Like the example you gave, the 5 years, you never know when someone's going to need your services. But my goal with communication is I just instinctively, I want to be in someone's top 3. So when they have that moment in their life where they think, I might need a financial advisor, I want our name somewhere in the recess of their brain to pop up and say, I remember their content, or I've engaged with them. Boy, they've had some really interesting things to say, and I didn't need them until now, but now I'm in their decision set.
Yeah. And Adam, you mentioned earlier, don't expect to see results right away. Yeah. And you also stressed, put yourself out of your comfort zone. Not everybody has to be a social media darling and a podcast expert, but push yourself, because you might be good at something you're not comfortable with now, and you use yourself as an example of that. But how long should you wait to say, is this working or is it not working? Because you mentioned, don't give up after 2 months, because then your clients are like, where is that paper you distributed? How long should you wait?
I think it depends on what you're trying to measure. So for me, kind of in my journey with marketing and content is I used to really, really obsess over the number of downloads I got. And I still pay attention to that stuff, but I measured things differently now. I've had to take a step back and say, why are we doing this in the first place? My personal mission is to change the way wealth management services are delivered. And so are the things that I'm doing helping advance that personal mission? And if so, I'm going to feel good about it. Is it changing the conversations that I want our advisors to have with our clients? Then I'm going to feel good about that. And if people engage with it and they come in and they do business with us and our firm grows, then I'm happy with that. So if something gets downloaded 500 times or 5,000 times, I don't really care now in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, I want to have more downloads versus less, and it still pisses me off that I can't figure it out. I think this episode is going to be the one. This is it. I'm going national, and then 2 people see it. Thanks, Mom. But the rest of it is oh my gosh. So I've stopped trying to obsess and figure it out, but I just keep at it, and I think over time, it just eventually works.
Any tips you have on that, Sam?
Yeah, I think, it is a long game. Just like if somebody came to you after you started managing their money and they said after 2 months, well, where's all these great returns? What's happening? You'd say, okay, well, we're in it for the long haul. We have to look at the long term. It's the same thing with anything in life, especially, but with marketing as well. But there are things that you can do to, maybe do some A/B testing with certain things. You have a newsletter and you're noticing it's not getting as many opens that you want because you're just doing weekly newsletter number 200, number 202. If you change the subject line to be a preview of what's inside, you'll probably find you'll get a lot more opens because people are going to see this week we're talking about these topics. So, you can make little tweaks while you're waiting to see the results come in.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Samantha, your content is always great. How do you find that space to be creative? You got a very busy life. How do you recreate those moments where you can be creative?
That's a good question. And thank you for the compliment. Pretty much for me, it's quiet time. I feel like we always all have a device and inputs, so I try to either go for a run or a walk or do something where I don't have any inputs and I can just think and then the ideas come.
Yeah. I do the same thing. For me, it's really early morning or it's out in nature. And if it doesn't happen naturally, I actually have to schedule it. Well, I don't think you can schedule creativity. I think you can schedule instances or moments where you might feel more creative and then just hope it comes.
Reading books or articles from other industries is another one.
So I do want to take questions, but before we do so, can you each just 15, 30 seconds, what's the most important thing that you would leave people with about communicating better with your prospects and clients?
Segment your list better, and you're probably under communicating. You need to communicate more.
I'd go back to the study and I'd say, treat your clients as prospects. Like, you have to keep dating them.
Yeah, that's great. The thing I would point to is we showed that 75% of advised individuals are thinking about other advisors. You can either be scared by that or you can view that as a huge opportunity for you, right? There's a whole lot of people out there that aren't going to be as great of a communicator as you are or are going to quickly become. That's a great opportunity for you to grow your practice. I want to take a couple questions. First of all, how are you using AI tools for creating communications?
I think AI is amazing for, I mentioned a strategy could be something as simple as, here's 3 articles I read this week that you probably saw in the headlines too. Here's what our take is on it. And you could put that, into an AI tool and ask for AI to give you the most salient points of the article and help you summarize it. Or if there's something you want to talk about, you can ask AI for an outline. So, for a content creation standpoint, it's great to get you started.
I haven't used it yet because I like to try to be a little bit more like personal topics for the content I create, because again, I'm not leaning into the technical side of things. I just haven't had a need to use it yet because I'm just trying to keep it as personal as I can make it. At some point I'll have to. You can only come up with so many podcast episodes.
Yeah, I talked to an advisor the other day who had a really interesting strategy about how they use AI. Number one is they'll go into ChatGPT and say, what are the most relevant topics that a wealth advisor should be communicating with their customers about now? And they get a great answer. And then they feed back into the prompt, what are some talking points about those topics? Now, take a pause there and apply human knowledge and learning and understand machines make mistakes, but it's a great way to get your mind going on what could I be talking about and potentially do first drafts and also check with whatever your compliance related capacities are. Please do check, because that's always an important thing.
Another one is if you look at Google if you look with Google at trends, Google Trends, it will tell you what are people searching for the most right now. That's always a fun thing to go look and see what pop culture references are people looking at, what kind of news headlines. And then you could ask AI, how can I make a connection between this thing everyone's searching and a financial lesson? And it might give you an idea, and then that can become something you talk about.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're drawing to a close here. If anybody in the audience would like to follow up with you guys to have continue a dialogue, how would they reach you? Adam?
LinkedIn, that's about as social as I get, so feel free to connect and I'm happy to visit.
Same thing, LinkedIn, and I know it's X now, but I always say Twitter.
Yep. And I'm available through all kinds of medium. We also have a booth over here, and we're serving ice cream right now. So if anybody wants to talk, happy to meet you over there. But
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.